Hey everybody. Hopefully I'll give you guys a few minutes to get in here. All right, looks like you guys are finally switching over from the kind of the notification over to the actual live. So surprise everybody, it's Fennsomnia, your favorite non-PC beer drinking, thrill the chase talking show. You never know when I'm gonna go live, guys. So here we are, surprise Monday night. So just a couple of admin notes, guys. It is a Monday night. My wife is working this evening. I've got the kids. They are in bed, should be technically asleep, but you never know when they're going to wake up and come out. If they come out, guys, we all got family and we got kids, so they are a priority. I'll take care of them. And if, you know, it's more than that, I'll just have to shut the show down. So you never know what's going to happen here. So tonight, it is a Monday, but, you know, I'm free, white, and over 18, and I'm going to have a beer at 10 o'clock at night. This is from the Santa Fe Brewing Company. It's called the Sunsetter, and it says it's a farmhouse ale with lime and agave. So it's kind of a New Mexico type brew. So I'm going to have that. So cheers to you guys. I'm going to pour my Three Rivers Brewery cup. So, guys, when I do these shows, I don't kind of put out any notifications any longer. You know, I'm not really big on worrying about how many people are watching this. I think it's more fun seeing those people that are really avid searchers and that really just want to talk Fenn and want to get involved. And that's what ends up happening. You end up getting, you know, 20, 30, 40 people in here that are really those avid searchers that just, you know, are, you know, they got Fenn on the brain. They want to talk Fenn. It's 10 o'clock at night. It's 8 o'clock at night. It's 12 o'clock in the morning for some people. And some people over the pond, it might be early in the morning. Who knows? Cheers, guys. Yes, Minotaur. I've seen you. Ooh, that's good. Wanting to discuss SB 107. I will be talking a little bit about that. You know, I saw Cynthia's video, and I think I didn't get a chance to watch Susie's video she put out today on her talking about 107. But I do want to talk a little bit about a video that Susie put out this week and kind of discuss that. But one of the key things I want to talk about tonight is what I'm calling the evolution of Forrest Fenn's advice to searchers. And I'll be kind of going into that. Again, like I said, the Minotaur will be talking about SB 107 because there's been a lot of chatter about that. I want to talk about Minotaur Marino. I want to talk about your whole selling your essay to the searchers. And I want to talk about something new kind of tripped up in my brain about, you know, Forrest Fenn's property. Is it mislaid, abandoned, lost property? I want to talk a little bit about that. Some of you that are familiar with Treasure Tracer and that I'm now over there kind of just talking, I wouldn't say exclusively on that forum because I do chat a little bit on Thor. But that's kind of where it's kind of becoming my new home. I like some of the people that are over there, you know, Jack, Matt Alone, and Rodney Greenway. We're kind of over there and we're chatting, and I like those guys. And there's a few others that I've known for a while that I'm chatting with over there. It's just kind of a new area I'm moving on to and doing something different. So it's kind of fun. So yeah, tonight, I don't know how long we'll go. It might be an hour, might be 30 minutes, might be a couple hours. You just never know where we're going to go with this. So again, you guys are all familiar with this. You're obviously avid searchers. If you have a question, you know, put that little @ sign, the flip side, like Minotaur Marino's done in here, and then I'll actually see it. So Minotaur, I see you talking about it. We'll talk about that stuff when I get to that. So really just want to say hi to you guys. I think it was Sir Crow that was the front running bastard, you know, in the chat room tonight. I don't know what time he got in there, but when I pulled up the live notification, I saw that he was first in there. There was quite a few other people, you guys chatting in there. So I just want to say a hi to a few of you guys. Sled Nick, howdy, good to see you. Hooli, Off Trail Jaeger, John Shan, that's a new name I haven't seen. Welcome, John. Rob G, good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. Steve Wayne. Rave Ryder, that's a new one I haven't seen. Welcome. Faith Hunter. Minotaur. Lydia D, good to see you again. I haven't seen you put out anything in a while, Lydia. Are you still putting out videos or doing anything? I know I've subscribed. I just haven't seen any, new content from you. Evan Penn, how are you? Okay. Journeyman. Kurt Hensley. Lori James. Hey, Lori, how are you? You're up late as well. Jungle Cruiser. That's one of our friends over there at Treasure Chaser. Good to see you in here, Jungle Cruiser. Cheers to you. Okay. So I kind of hinted at it. The first thing I really wanted to talk about was kind of what I'm calling the evolution of Forrest Fenn's advice to searchers, and how I'm going to do this. And some of you may like it or may not like it, but I'm really going to capture and just play the audio from several different videos where Forrest Fenn is talking specifically about advice to searchers. And then there's also some, quotes from Forrest that I'll be talking about too. And there's about 8 different ones that I'll be talking specifically about. So you'll just have to listen to them, and I can't say I'm going to put the link in there, because whether I keep this video up or not, you just never know with me. If I keep it up, then I will put the links in there for you guys. But you guys should be familiar with these. You'll hear the audio. I'll read you those things that are written and not audio. So let me just get right to it. So the first one, and this really isn't, I wouldn't call it advice from Forrest, but this first one that came out, and you guys are probably familiar with this. This is one that Lucky Love posted, which was actually the very first interview done with Forrest Fenn after the release of The Thrill of the Chase. And you can find this on Lucky Love's channel, but it's called Forrest Fenn, October 25th of 2010, first interview for Thrill of the Chase. And this is about the 17-minute mark. And this is what Forrest Fenn says in that very first interview with Forrest Fenn. And you guys will have to comment if you can hear this, because I haven't really tested it out. But I'm going to go ahead and play this.
In the next war.
Now, you have done something quite unusual, and I think fascinating to many, which is that you buried a treasure chest somewhere in the hills or mountains north of Santa Fe, and have left clues in your memoir whereby people can find it.
I've taken this treasure chest to a very secret and very special place, and I've hidden it there. And there are 9 clues in my book. You have to read the book. But if you have an imagination and you have a pretty good mind and you have a little bit of resolve, you can find that treasure chest. First one to can have it.
So in that very first interview, I'm sorry, I'm just going back over to this. So in that very first interview in October, Forrest Fenn is telling us, there's 9 clues in my book, and you have to read my book. So he's very focused on saying you have to read my book. There's 9 clues in my book. So again, kind of that first him talking about it, and I don't want to call it advice because he doesn't use the word advice. He's saying you have to read my book. There is 9 clues in my book. So that's kind of, some of the first, words we're getting from Fenn. You guys know I repeat myself. I apologize for that, but it's just how I work. So now the next thing I'm going to go to, and I see you guys are saying stuff in here. Lydia, I see you say you've been busy. That's fine. We all got lives. Yeah, this is just a hobby, right? To some of us, it's a lot more than a hobby, but this is just a hobby. We all have lives, so I get it. But I'd love to see some more content from you. So the next one, this is probably the very first time Forrest Fenn actually uses the word advice, and as speaking to searchers, as far as advice on how to solve this riddle, at least in my opinion, how I interpret it. But this comes, and I can't remember whose channel it's on. Let me see if I make sure I got this right, who I pulled this from. I pulled this actually from the Hoosier Sisters. So I'll give them some props. I know a few others have it, but I pulled this one from theirs. And this is the Forrest Fenn Lorena Mills interview from May 13th of 2011. So this is roughly 6-7 months after The Thrill of the Chase has been released. And this is the first time that, I've heard Forrest Fenn using the word advice. So I'm going to play this, and I don't know. Did you guys heard that last one, right? No problems with the audio? Okay. So I'm going to play this for you guys, and hopefully you can hear it.
In my book, there's a poem, like I said, and there are 9 clues in the poem, and the clues are in consecutive order. If you can read that, if you want to find a treasure chest, you have my book there. I'll tell you how to do it. Read the book just normally, the poem and the rest of the book, and then go back and read the poem 6, 8, 10 times. Study every line, every word. Then after you do that, read the book again slowly with the idea of looking for clues or hints that are in the book that will help you follow the clues. You can find the chest with just the clues, but there are hints in the book that'll help you with the clues. Again, the book.
Okay, so he didn't really use the word advice, so I apologize for that. But he says, if you want to find my treasure, here's what you want to do. So it's kind of like he's inferring that he's giving you advice. But what he's telling you to do is to read my book, the poem and the book completely. Then go back and read the poem 6, 8, 10 times, and then go back and read the book slowly, looking for hints that will help you with the clues. And then a lot of people will that are big on using the hints will use that as Forrest Fenn is telling you that the best way to figure this out. He's giving you his best advice. But what they chop off at the end of there is that Forrest Fenn does tell you, look, you can find the treasure with just the clues, but there are hints in the book that will help you with the clues. Okay, so it's still possible that you can find the treasure with just the clues, but there are hints in the book. So this is, again, advice he's giving you early on in the chase. So we're talking 2010, 2011. He's really referring to the book and the poem. So we're getting book and poem, book and poem. So now I'm not trying to ignore you guys. I want to get through this whole thing, then we can kind of talk about where I'm going with this. Now, the next audio I'm going to play for you comes from the infamous Forrest Fenn at Moby Dickens bookshop in Taos, New Mexico. And this is from November 2nd of 2013. So this is roughly about a year and a half later from the Lorena Mills interview. And I believe I got this one from Toby at A Gypsy's Kiss. So I'm gonna play this, and this is just a short clip. You all should be familiar with it, but I'm gonna play this one.
She said that's not the.
There are no clues in this book, but there are some hints. What I tell people to do, if you're really serious about looking for the treasure, get the thrill of the chase and read it, and then go back and read the poem over and over and over again, and then go back and read the book again, but slowly, looking at every little abstract thing that might catch up in your brain, that might be a hint to help you with the clues. Any part of some is no better than no part of any.
So there again, right? He's saying, read the book and then read the poem over and over and over again, and then go back and read the book, looking for any abstract thing that trips up in your mind. Any part of some is better than no part of any. So again, he's reiterating kind of what he said, just a year and a half ago. It's all about the poem and the book. Those two things together. Hints in the book and clues in the poem. He's telling you to look for things that trip up in your mind. Now, the next thing that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to tie all these in together for you guys, and some of you probably know where I'm going with this. ES, I don't know why you have a bunch of messages retracted. Are you, editing yourself? Anyway, the next thing I want to do, and this kind of goes back in time a little bit. I kind of messed this up, but this goes to Everything is Stories Radio, and this is from August of 2013. So this was just a few months prior to that previous Moby Dickens ones. But let me just play this one for you guys.
Do you have any advice for the people looking for the treasure without giving any more information?
Yeah, I have some advice. Read the book and then study the poem over and over. Read it over and over, maybe even memorize it. And then go back and read the book again, looking for hints that are in the book that are going to help you with clues that are in the poem. That's the best advice that I can give them. You have to find out, you have to learn where the first clue is. They get progressively easier after you discover where the first clue is.
Forrest.
Okay, so again, we've got, Forrest talking book and poem, and then what I find really interesting, he's sitting there saying, what does he say? You've got to figure out where the first clue is. And I find that interesting because we know where the first clue is, right? It's in the poem. And the first clue, according to Forrest Fenn, is begin at where warm waters halt, right? But he's telling us you got to figure out where the first clue is. So, is the first clue a location? And that's the whole point. And all of us will agree that, warm waters halt is supposed to be some location, whether you think that's a geothermal feature, you think it's, anything else, it's obviously a location. I find that interesting. Minotaur, I know I'm not trying to ignore you guys. I will go back through whatever questions you're posing out there, statements, but just give me a chance to get through this, guys. So again, everything, from 2010 to 2013 has been book and poem. He's consistently stayed with that, book and poem, hints and clues. Now, we're going to fast forward 3 years to the next time I really hear him giving some advice, and that is to a podcast called the Last Word Podcast. And I'm gonna play this one for you guys. And I don't know if all of you have heard this, but maybe you have. I'm gonna play this one.
Go figures.
No.
Uh-oh, I'm having a problem with it. Give me a second, guys. I don't know if I hit the... I'm going to try and refresh this and see what it does. Okay, it totally... I can't remember what point it was at in the...
KSFR programming and
podcasts
are made possible by the financial support of
vision and fetishes and two little carved angels that I hit it, or where I hit it. I'm the only one in the world that will know that.
Hold on, guys.
So
I'm
far.
trying to find this out.
And you invite anyone who wants to find it.
Sure, I invite parents to. I've said that if I'm going to go, who says I can turn in the same thrill of the chase that I've had? I don't know how old it is Romanesque. But there's diamonds. There are 2 salon sapphires.
Getting closer. Hold on, guys.
There's 8 emeralds, and there's all kinds of gold bracelets and wakas.
I think I'm close to it.
Print and gold figures.
Here it is.
Now we have a few more minutes, but do you have any advice or hints for people who might want to look for the treasure?
Sure. In my book, there's a poem, and there are 9 clues in that poem. I would suggest if you want to find my treasure, read that poem over and over, and then try to follow the clues to the treasure.
And where is that?
So, okay, sorry about that little malfunction there. But what he's saying there is read his poem over and over and over, and then, try to follow the clues to the treasure. Nothing in there in 2016 was even talking about the book, right? It seems like everything from 2010 all the way to 2013 was what? Poem, book, and poem. It was like a symbiotic relationship between the book and the poem. But then in 2016, again, when he's asked, do you have any advice for searchers? What does he tell them? Read the poem over and over and over and try to follow the clues, which we know are in the poem, to the treasure. So now we've got this, all of a sudden we've got this change. We've got this change from book and poem to just poem. And I'm going to go further in this. Now, the next thing we get on advice comes in 2017 from Mysterious Writings, 6 questions. I'm going to pull this one up and read it for you guys. And this comes from the very first 6 questions from the 2017 questions. And this came from Jenny. We all know it, and I'll read it to you guys. Even today, after more than 6 years of people searching, and after all the news coverage, articles, and stories written about your secreted treasure, some people are just learning about your thrill of the trace treasure hunt and getting involved. It continues to inspire. Do you have any advice for these new people? How should they begin the search 6 years after so many others? Do you feel they are at a disadvantage? And this is Forrest Fenn's response. No. Fresh eyes and new thinking might provoke a winning idea. I would advise new searchers to look for the clues in my poem and try to marry them to a place on a map. It seems the longer one thinks about the search, the more they complicate the problem. So here it is, 2017, 6+ years into this chase. He's not talking about the book. He's telling these new searchers, I would advise new searchers to look for the clues in my poem. They should be obviously there within the 166 words, right? Whether you think they're the 9 clues or the 9 sentences like me, or you think they only exist between begin and cease, it really doesn't matter. He's telling you to look for the clues in the poem and try to marry them to a place on a map. And then he says, it seems the longer one thinks about the search, the more they complicate the problem. Why are they complicating the problem? That is, I think, the question. Okay, so now here we are again. I'm repeating myself, I know that, but 2017, it's no longer, this symbiotic relationship of poem and book. The advice is go to the poem, marry him to a geographical place on a map, right? I'm just going to check your chat room here real quick. Cheers, guys. I hope you're following me. I know this is going along, and I'm going to tie this all in for you guys, but I think you know where I'm going with it. Okay. Now, and July 1st, okay, just this whole, we know that the mysterious writings question, this one about, new fresh eyes, no fresh eyes can come up with a winning idea, came out in February of 2017. So now July 1st of 2017 is when we got that whole get back in the box comment from Forrest, right? And I'll read that one for you guys. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it, probably have it memorized. And that one was, it was a featured Q&A, July 1st of 2017. It said, Mr. Fenn, I'm not even close to solving your riddle. I've tried for months and nothing works. I'm not asking for a clue to the treasure. I'm asking for a clue to the clues. Please help me, Mary. And Forrest responds, Dear Ms. Mary, the solve is difficult for many searchers because their minds think the clues are tougher to decrypt than they really are. Some say they're trying to think outside the box as if the solution lies somewhere out there. Until now, I have resisted telling them to get back in the box where their thoughts are comfortable and flow more easily. The blueprint is challenging, so the treasure may be located by the one who can best adjust. To illustrate my point, go to YouTube, Smarter Every Day. So now here he is telling this Ms. Mary that, people are tending to overcomplicate this thing because they think it's tougher to decrypt than it really is. It's really simple. It's straightforward. There's no subterfuge in there. He wasn't playing any games when he wrote that poem. And some say they're trying to think outside the box as if the solution lies out there. Well, what is the box? Is the box those clues that he's telling Miss Mary about? The solve is difficult for many searchers because their mind think the clues are tougher to decrypt than they really are. And then some are trying to think outside of that box. That box could simply just be the poem because they think that the solution lies out there somewhere. Well, why do they think that solution lies out there? Where are they? I think they get overly focused on these hints. And I'm going to tie this all in together, guys. So now the next thing, I'm just going to go back over here and see what you guys are chatting about and not beat me up. Cheers. Okay. So now we've got that get back in the box. He's now focusing more on the poem. And now we're going to get to the last advice that we got from Forrest. And this comes in the very early part of last year of 2018. You guys are all familiar with this one. And I pulled this from ABC Nightline on YouTube. And this is the one, people are searching for elusive treasure. A multimillionaire claims he hid it. That's the title of this one. But this is the one we all know where he says the whole simplify, right? Let me play this for you guys. The very last one, then we'll tie this together.
So we had to ask, is there any tiny little hint, any tiny little clue you'd like to leave us with? He's thinking about it.
No.
Okay.
Well, I will give you a clue. Try to simplify it if you can. That's good advice.
So he says, try to simplify if you can. That's good advice. What is he saying there? He's sitting there saying that we need to get back in the box. People are thinking that the clues are more difficult to crypt than they really are. And they're looking outside the box as if the solution lies out there somewhere. Now he's telling them, you know, and his last advice that I'm hearing from him is try to simplify if you can. That's good advice. To me, and I'm trying to tie this all in together for you guys really quick and make this all make sense of this long 20-minute tirade I've gone on here, is that his initial advice to searchers, you know, going back to 2010, 2011, was, you know, read my book and read my poem, understand the poem, understand it, and then go back to the book looking for subtle hints that are, or subtle clues that are going to help you out with the clues in the poem. So I think that a lot of us searchers, you know, in the beginning and all through this whole thing are taking that advice from the beginning, and we've continually added so much noise. Again, I've talked about this: scrapbooks, weekly words, random words, surprise words, videos, us YouTubers, everybody out there. There's so much noise out there that we just overcomplicate this thing. And I think Forrest Fenn over the years has really tried to refocus us on what is important in figuring this thing out. He may just be frustrated with us. He's like, golly, you know, and really maybe he ought to be frustrated in himself, you know, by him telling us, look for these subtle hints. And then we think that these subtle hints are so important in trying to solve this thing, when in reality, we need to simplify. We need to stay within the box. We need to get back within that box. And I really believe, you know, and again, this is just, you know, my own subjective belief that the poem really is all the information that we need. And the more that we go outside of that, the more we add our own subjective, you know, beliefs, specialized knowledge, belief that what we're reading actually is a subtle hint that's going to help us out with a clue. There's just too much, guys. There's just too much. And I think that's what he's been trying to do since 2016. He's kind of like been like, holy shit, I set these guys off on a million rabbit holes. And maybe he really does want this thing found in his lifetime. And that's why he's trying to refocus us. You know, I mean, when he started this thing off, maybe he really was ambivalent about this thing, you know, not really caring whether it was found in his lifetime. As he gets older and older in age, maybe he's more like, man, I'd really like to have this thing found. I'd really like to sit down with that person. You know, I'd really like to have that bracelet back, or I'd really like to, you know, snub my nose at all those people that have been telling me this is a hoax. I mean, who knows? I just really feel that he's trying to refocus us that. And then, you know, to tie this all in together in this Playboy interview that Jason Dent shared with all of us, I don't know if it's still out anymore, but he, again, you know, had told us, you know, that I had said it a number of times, you know, to people to get back in the box. And this was right after he said that whole, you know, people were stomping on the ants while the elephants marched by. You know, again, I think we're all so caught up in the minutia of these subtle clues that are sprinkled in the stories. And then we're trying to tie in historical figures, historical events, and everything else to put these things together. And guys, I'm guilty just as much as every one of you of doing this in the past. And I had these great, wonderful solves that had stuff that was so tied in with historical references and everything else. It was so far outside of the book and the poem. It was ridiculous. It was beautiful. Trust me, I loved it. I thought it was, you know, the best solve in the world. I mean, don't we all feel that way? But it was just, oh man, it was built on, you know, the sand. It wasn't built on solid, ugly rocks. You know, it was just, it was built on shining sand. It was beautiful, but it was completely subjective. Cheers. Okay, so now I probably completely wasted 20 minutes of your time rambling on this whole thing. But one other thing I want to quickly talk about that, over a year ago, I did a video titled Message in a Bottle. And some of you, I would imagine probably most of you have probably watched it, maybe haven't seen it again. It's one of my lesser viewed ones, so it's not that popular, and that's okay. But in that video, I did somewhat of an analogy on, the Thrill of the Chase book kind of being like, a message in a bottle. And what I meant by that is that Forrest Fenn, took this book and he wrote it, and then he kind of cast it away in a very obscure bookstore. He only put out 1,000 copies. He didn't think anybody would buy it because his mom was dead, joking. But it blew up at one point in time, right? And to me, I look at that as that Forrest Fenn, kind of like a castaway, a castaway in an island would take a message in a bottle and throw it into the vastness of the ocean with hopes that somebody eventually would find that bottle and know what happened to that person and be able to pass on to loved ones, or maybe even rescue that person. So I kind of see in that video, I talked about how the book is kind of like that bottle. It is merely the vessel that Forrest Fenn used to get his poem out there so that people could, hear his treasure story and hear about it. And he was looking for the way to get that out there. And like he said, and Jenny had asked him once before, why did you write a poem? Why did you put, your treasure story or whatever, your map, however you want to call it, in a poem version? And Forrest then had said, and you can look this up on Terry Scamp by a keyword, I wrote a poem because I needed an avenue to present the clues and start searchers on the chase. So the poem was merely an avenue to present the clues. And I look at that in the same way to say that this book is merely the avenue or the vessel to present the poem. The poem is what, in my opinion, is merely the box and what he's really trying to focus us on. So if you haven't watched that video, a message in a bottle that I put in there, and you can find it on my YouTube channel, I would suggest go back and watching it. It's not great. It's just probably a good 10-minute recount of the chase in a nutshell, but it kind of talks about that whole theory and everything. Okay, so that wraps all that up, guys. So I'm just going to go through here really quick and just see a couple of your comments. I know you guys are chatting amongst yourselves. I'm surprised we've got 50 people in here at this time of night. That's kind of shocking for me. I mean, I don't know. I don't really care. I wish they would give you timestamps in this whole chat. Like, I can't tell where we started or anything. Hope you guys are doing good. This last weekend, just to give you guys a heads up, was my birthday weekend. I turned 49 on Friday. May 31st was my birthday. So cheers to all you Geminis, you fellow Geminis out there. But we did a Cajun broil this weekend. If you're not familiar with what that is, it's we boil up crawfish and shrimp and potatoes and sausage and snow crab legs and king crab legs, and we just, you cook them up. It takes about 45 minutes or so, and you cook it up really good, and you just pour it out on the table, and everybody just eats it. We had like 12 people there, and we had a 30-quart broiler that we broiled it up in, and all 12 of us couldn't even finish it all. Like, it was just, it was awesome, and it was so good. We actually did it the next night with some other friends, so we just had a lot of fun. It was a great weekend. We had parties every night of the weekend, Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night, and now here I am Monday night, back at it. Hey, you only live once, right? You sleep when you die. All right, I'm just looking. You guys are chatting amongst yourselves here. I see one from Minotaur Marino here. It says, read the book, read the book, read the book, read the book, read the book. Poem purist still. Again, I didn't start out as a poem purist. I evolved into one, Minotaur. And again, my solve is based purely on the poem. Of course, I pay attention to everything outside of it, but everything outside of that is purely subjective, and I understand that. And none of that stuff outside of the box do I base my solve upon. There's a lot of things in there that are checks and balances, or positive, or I should say negative confirmers that your solve could be incorrect. Again, if it's below 5,000 feet or above 10,200, then your solve is probably wrong. Okay, that is a negative confirmer. Okay, so those things you still need to pay attention to, but that doesn't take away from what I interpret as a poem purist. Again, you cannot look up a dictionary and find a definition of what a poem purist is, right? So who owns the definition of what a poem purist is? I claim to be a poem purist. This is what I think it is. Others claim it's something else and base some pure restrictions that I don't think are possible. Most people think a poem purist is somebody who's sitting in the dark with nothing but a flashlight in the poem. Ain't gonna happen, folks. Okay. I believe that all you really need is the poem and a map and a good understanding of grammar, word meanings, and everything else. Everything outside of it can be completely subjective. And you got to understand what subjective means. But I get more shade on being a poem purist than anything in the world. Like it's funny. Like I think it's comical. There's more people that have fun poking fun at poem purists than probably they do even working on the poem itself. And then I had somebody said, you know, what Sean doesn't realize is that 99% of the population focuses 99% on the poem. And I'm like, well, great. Welcome to the club. You might be a poem purist too. I mean, okay. Oh, it's fun. Faith Hunter, flip side. I always wonder what Fenn means when he talks about out of the box, get back in the box. Could the box be the poem? I can't say with any absolute 100% certainty that is what he's saying. I believe my subjective opinion is that he is talking about the box is the poem. Again, he's been, again, like we just went through this whole thing. It's been poem, book, poem, book, poem, book. And then all of a sudden, 2016, it's like poem, you know, focus on the poem, get back in the box, the poem. I don't know. That's how I read it. I'm not saying that that's true. Again, I'm not an authority on the chase. I don't have the treasure. This is not Forrest Fenn's bracelet. That's just my opinion. Okay. It could be. The box could simply be the book too. I mean, again, I've said before that it's possible that the subtle clues that are sprinkled in these stories, it may be possible that all the information that we need to understand what those subtle clues are telling us are wholly contained within the poem. There's many people that look at, you know, things inside the book, you know, and they think that's a subtle clue that's pointing to something outside of this, into a completely different book. You know, you've got people that write books that go into that, you know, that go into believing that those subtle hints are pointing to geographical locations, and these things are way outside the book. And who's to say they're wrong? I'm not me. You know, again, I try and focus on the book. I'm just trying to make sense of what Forrest Fenn is saying by get back in the box. No different than what you're doing, Faith Hunter. So I'm not the authority on the chase. Neither are any of us in this. Unless Forrest Fenn is watching tonight, he's the authority, right? Forrest, say hi if you're here. I don't know. You're probably waving at the screen right now. If you are, you're not going to comment, obviously. Minotaur says, does in the box refer to a canyon, logic, or the chest in your opinion? I think it refers to logic. I think logic means is to get back into the pure evidence. And what is the only real evidence we have but the poem? The poem are the 9 clues. And the definition of a clue is, any evidence or information used in the detection of a crime or the solving of a mystery, right? And what is that mystery or that crime, if you want to call it that, but the treasure's location, right? So a clue is simply that. And the logic is that we need to focus back on the evidence. I don't think it refers to a canyon. I don't think it refers to the chest, even though it is box shaped or, or anything like that. I think getting back in the boxes is to, narrow, again, to think outside the box is to expand your mind and open it to all sorts of ideas and wonderful imaginative things, which is great and wonderful. But in this, we're trying to solve where Forrest Fenn hid that. And if the evidence, if the 9 clues that are followed precisely are found within that poem, then that is the pure evidence we have. In my opinion, that is the box. Some people think that's the book. I can't say whether they're right or wrong, but I think that box is simply the poem itself. And if it is the book, stop going so far outside of this. People are still having a lot of fun looking at the subtle hints and trying to find out what they are. I personally think one of the biggest subtle hints in that book is the line that just precedes the poem. So I wrote a poem containing 9 clues that, if followed precisely, will lead to the end of my rainbow and the treasure. And he ends that in the colon. I think that is one of the, in my opinion, because I am a poem purist, again, I think all the information is in the poem. And I came to this conclusion that could be a subtle hint after the fact that I believe that the 9 clues could be the 9 sentences. Then I read that line in a completely different manner. I'm like, why does he even have to tell us 9 clues? And you guys know I've talked about this. But I think there's a very valid reason why he specifically told us 9 clues. Sorry, Minotaur, I know I'm going way off, and I know you want to talk about SB 107, right? Faith Hunter, I've had the same thoughts for a while. I think he is referencing the poem when he says the box. Sure, absolutely. I mean, I can't say with any authority that's what he is, but. Minotaur, so what you are saying is you no longer a poem purist. Whatever, if you don't want to call me that's fine. I still call myself a poem purist. Oh, again, so many people, they hate the evil poem purist. Look out. GCG, hey, I'm glad you caught a live show. I know you said the other day you had a hard time catching them, but keep in mind, and this is what GCG says, keep in mind the Forrest quote, success is the omniscient guru. I don't know what you mean by that. I don't understand that whole line of his. It's a bunch of wackadoodle to me. If it means something to you and helps you out in your solve, GCG, great. I don't know what it means. Cheers. I have another. I come prepared. We'll see how far this goes. Okay. Anyway, guys, if you don't point it to me, I'm not going to read. I'll go back and watch your stuff later, but I can't read everything. Otherwise, we'll be here for hours. Minotaur says, there are a million where warm water salt that fit perfectly. If all you need is a poem, where does Mr. Fenn tell you you are right? He tells you. You just got to figure it out. It's all in the poem, in my opinion. I can go back up. I think skipped on me here. Sorry about that, guys. Give me a second. Go up here. Yep. Okay. There's what Minotaur said. Excuse me. Faith Hunter, happy birthday. Thank you, Faith. I appreciate that. 49 years old. I'm a 49er. Hopefully this year, maybe I'll dig up some gold. Right? I don't know if it's buried or not. I mean, we don't know. That's the whole question. I think there's a big reason, and this could be a whole different video, and I won't go into this, but I think there's a very specific reason why he didn't want to give that as a clue, whether it was buried or not. Lydia D, a flashlight, the poem, and a sandwich. Yeah. You can't be in the dark without some food, right? Some food for your brain. Thank you, Jimmy Fast. I appreciate the happy birthday wishes. Thank you very much. Okay, I think we're catching up with you guys. Got a lot of great people in here tonight. I see 60 plus people in here. That's awesome. Beanie Boo Candy. That's a new name. Give me a shout out, they said. I wasn't even looking at it. I just saw your name and saw that. BBC. Okay, Beanie Boo Candy. Okay, that's a new name. Okay. Gay Delkin, Eugene, how are you? Good to see you in here. I miss you guys over at Harry's. I still lurk over there and watch what you guys are posting about. Deep Thinker, hey, Deep, you got a question here. What about the times Fenn starts to say something and then changes it halfway through? Have you analyzed those moments? Yeah, there's been quite a few times where he starts to say something and then he stops and then goes on. I kind of listen to those things. I don't have them off the top of all of them off the top of my brain right now, but I do find that curious when he says things like, one of my favorite ones is where, what video was that? I think you can find it on Down Neitzel's site, but it was the one where, I love because he specifically says, it's not just a sentence, it's a craft. And he's talking specifically about the poem. It was the one where, him and Douglas Preston are being interviewed back in, I think it was like 2012 or something. I think you can find this one on Down Neitzel's site, on the media coverage. And I find that funny. I got to send Dale an email because you can't find that on his, at least I haven't seen it. Maybe somebody can correct me wrong, but you can't find that media coverage on the very front of his website, on his blog, where you can find it really easy. You have to do like Down Neitzel media coverage, search in Google in order to find it. But it's one where, Douglas asked him, how did you write the poem, or how did you figure out how to write it? And Forrest Fenn says, most people read that poem and they think that's something that I did and then he stops, and to answer your question, Deep Thinker, I think what he was trying to say is most people think I wrote that thing just off the cuff, that I just him and hawed it and wrote it. But he says he worked on that thing for many years. We all know that he's worked on that thing for, he says 15, but really if he hit it in, 2009, 2010, like he says in that time frame, he was 79 or 80, we all think it's 2010. Then he had, since 88 to 2010, that's 22 years. So, what's he really saying there? But again, he trails off there and he stops. So you can go listen to that. But yeah, I've analyzed a little bit of that, trying to figure out what he was trying to say, but he's done that a few times. I think in these videos I did tonight, he kind of talked about that. Faith Hunter, I never completely ruled out anything or think there will ever be 100% confirmations until I find it. You'll have to be able to adjust, as Fenn says. Yes, absolutely. Everybody knows I'm big on there's absolutely no confirmations in this thing. There's no road sign out there saying, welcome to Warm Waters Hall, welcome to the home of Brown. Here's the blaze pointing over there. And, there's none of that. A lot of people disagree with that, and that's okay, because I'm not the authority. I can't say, it's just my opinion based on, analysis and what I deem as logic. Doesn't make it right. It's just my logic, right? Your logic may be different. But I think there is a big difference between, one having certainty or confidence in their solve and then confirmation. And I talked a little bit about this on Treasure Chaser, and I had a thread on there called certainty versus confirmation. And it really came down, in my opinion, to things that are tangible and things that are intangible. And I don't want to go into the real definitions of those, and you probably understand these, and you can look them up if you don't. I didn't really understand them until I looked them up and did a little bit of research. But those things are intangible, are things that you cannot touch, you cannot feel, you cannot, in some ways, even see. It's just like knowledge. Knowledge is an intangible object. It's not even really an object. It's intangible. You can't touch it. It's just something you either have or you don't. And something that is tangible is like this beer. I can touch it. I will drink it. These notes, they're tangible. This book is tangible. I can touch, I can feel it. But the knowledge in this book that is used to find this treasure, even though it's in writing, it is tangible. You can't see it. You can touch the paper. It's still knowledge. It's intangible. You can't do it. So the certainty that somebody may have is intangible. You cannot prove it. You cannot touch that certainty. But the confirmation of your knowledge, that which is the recovery of the treasure and holding that treasure in your hands, is tangible. It is confirmation of the intangible knowledge that you have. And that only comes from recovery. And maybe I'm not expressing my words the best way, and maybe that's not making sense to you, and I apologize, but look into that for yourself. I think that may add some clarity to what I mean by there is no confirmation that we have any of the clues right until one has that, because our knowledge and our certainty is completely intangible. We believe it. We have faith. We have confidence. We have coincidences stacked upon coincidence that give us that confidence, but we have no tangible confirmation that it is correct. That will only come once one of us pulls this damn thing out of the dirt somewhere, right? Cheers. Minotaur, I'll get to it. Relax, buddy. Faith Hunter, exactly. I don't know if it's exact. That's just how my mind works. I can't prove it. It's just my logic, my thinking. I can't say it's, I went into this kind of conversation with Mike Nodine, or Lurker Mike, if some of you know him. I think he's in here somewhere tonight. Over on Treasure Tracer. It's like faith in God. God is intangible. You cannot touch and feel God. Now, many people will disagree with you and say that you can touch a child, you can touch a flower, you can touch those things, and you're touching God. You're touching and proof that God exists. And people see proof in God and Jesus and pieces of toast and everything else. But your faith and your belief in God is something that is intangible. It is not something that you can touch. And there is no tangible, in a logical person's mind, in my mind, tangible proof that God exists. And there is no tangible proof that God doesn't exist. It's Pascal's wager. You either choose to believe or you don't. If you choose to believe, what do you lose? You lose nothing. If God exists, you stand to gain the kingdom of heaven. If God doesn't exist, you still live a virtuous life, right? And I'm not the most religious person or the most spiritual person in the world, but I understand that somewhat of a paradox. It's like Schrodinger's cat, right? Either the cat is alive or he's dead. Okay, you have no tangible proof until you open that box and look at the cat. Everything else is just a thought process, right? And that's what this whole chase is a complete thought process, and until somebody has tangible proof that they have the treasure. Okay, I'm beating that dead horse, I know, and we want to get on to other things, and here we are at 52 minutes, and you guys know me, I ramble on. Susie, hey Susie, I didn't see you jump in here, and Bill, didn't see you jump in here as well. God, you guys are some late night owls like me. That's awesome. Cheers to you guys. Beanie Boo Candy. This is a funny new name. Okay. All right, guys. One thing I want to talk about before I get into SB 107, I know Minotaur, Marino, Justin, I appreciate you, and I want to talk about this. I will get into it. But one thing really quick that there's been a lot of talk, throughout the chase time, since the beginning of it till even currently now, about is Forrest Fenn's treasure abandoned property, mislaid property, lost property, whatever. I think, at least in my mind and in my poem purist mind, when I read the poem and I read that fifth stanza where he says, "So why is it I must go and leave my trove for all to seek?" When I went and I really did research into what the word trove meant and what constituted a trove, it had to be something that was deliberately hidden or concealed. And then on top of the fact of understanding the difference between mislaid, abandoned property, I really believe, based on the words in the poem, that Forrest Fenn's treasure is abandoned property. It's not mislaid, it's not lost, it is willfully abandoned property that Forrest Fenn abandoned it. And then I still, as a poem purist, guys, I still read the book. So just the other day I was going back and reading the book, and I found something that jumped out at me when it comes to this thought process that I've never really caught before. And I'm sure most of you have probably caught this, and I would applaud you, but I'd never caught it before, and I've probably read this book as many times as you guys. But if you have your book in front of you, you can find this now, but turn to page 129. And this is the chapter Gold and More, which we're all familiar with, is my favorite poem purist chapter in the book. Okay. 129. Okay, here we go, right here. You all got it, right? So hopefully you have this, but look, it's on the right-hand margin on the very bottom, and I'm going to read this to you guys. Forrest then wrote, I also wanted to include something personal with the treasure, because maybe the lucky finder would want to know a little bit about the foolish person who abandoned such an opulent cachet. So obviously the first word that should just jump out in our mind is Forrest then said, you know, who would want to know a little bit about the foolish person who abandoned such an opulent cachet. So Forrest Fenn, in his own words, is admitting to the fact that he was a foolish person that abandoned such an opulent cachet. So it seems like even in his own words in the book that he's admitting that this is abandoned property, guys. I've left it, like he writes in the book, for all to seek. Okay? He's leaving it for everybody. Everybody has the exact same opportunity. Everybody in this chat room, the 67 people that are in here right now, and the thousands of other people out there have the exact same opportunity to find this thing, because he's left it for all to seek. And the key word in that poem, leave, and the phrase for all to seek. Again, it's hinting in the word trove that this is an abandoned property. And it seems like even in the book, he's reconfirming that, confirming, if you want to call it that it is abandoned property. And I find it interesting too, and I was having this discussion on a thread that I put over on Treasure Tracer about this very topic, that I find it interesting that he says, he's put this autobiography, and he's talking about this one thing in there that should be his autobiography, because he'd want to know something about the foolish person who left such an opulent cachet or abandoned it for everybody. But that would only apply to somebody who would stumble upon it, right? It wouldn't apply to somebody who already knew about Forrest Fenn's treasure, figured out all the clues and walked right straight to it, right? Within several steps of the treasure. That would mean that person who purposely walked to it, didn't stumble upon it, already knew Forrest. So why would he need to put the thing in there? And this is going to tie into something else I want to talk about later. I probably should have put that in there, but I think it ties into, Pandora's box a little bit, and how he's going to know how this treasure is going to be found. And I might as well talk about it now. But, we were talking over on Treasure Tracer about this, about, that one possibility that is, that nobody's thought or analyzed about, that is related to the winning solve. And we know this goes back to, I think, the 2015 6 questions in the third question or something like that, where Forrest Fenn had said, what surprises me a little, that there's no one to my uncertain knowledge has analyzed one important possibility related to the winning solve. And I think the key word in that response from Forrest is he says, related to the winning solve. And what that means to me is that whatever this important possibility is not something that someone must know to find the treasure. It is only related to or associated with the winning solve. It doesn't necessarily mean that you must analyze or know this fact. I could be completely wrong. This is just my, subjective interpretation, the flip side of this whole debate about what that means. If it is related to the winning solve, it may not necessarily be imperative that you analyze this one important possibility in order to find the treasure. It's just related to it. It's just associated with it, right? So could that one important possibility be what opens up Pandora's box? Could whatever this information that is contained within, that olive jar, that he has taken so much precious care to ensure that stuff doesn't rot. Again, what did he do? He took out those $500 to $1,000 bills out of the treasure chest, right? Because He was worried that they would rot. Yet he took such precious care of that olive jar to ensure that that document, those 20,000 words that are written so small that you need a magnifying glass to read that he, what information could be contained within that? Could that, again, I've talked about this is associated, in my opinion, with like the purloined letter, that in that quote that I couldn't get right before was, the ascendancy of the person who gathered or found that treasure chest, kind of like the information that was contained within the purloined letter, was dependent upon the robber's knowledge of the loser's knowledge of the robber. What that basically means is that the finder would have to know that Forrest Fenn would know who that finder was. It's that ties in the robber's knowledge of the loser's knowledge of the robber. So I think, and this is just completely subjective, it doesn't help you find the treasure, but that which opens up Pandora's box may be the mechanism that Forrest Fenn will end up knowing if the treasure chest is found, only if he is still alive, obviously. There could be such information that is so juicy. I hate to say it's like, the whole closet stories of Tao's whole story or something, but I think that there's something in there that the release of that knowledge would indicate to Forrest without a doubt that that treasure chest has been found, even if Forrest Fenn wasn't told by the finder. Forrest Fenn would know without a doubt, okay, I'm the only one that knew that information. Everybody else that knew it is dead. I'm the only one that knows it. Just a thought. Okay, enough of that. Abandoned property. He says it, page 129 in here. Pandora's box opening could be based on information. Cheers. Okay, what are you saying over there? Marty Bird, how to see you? Who took the C out of Taos? What are you talking about, Bill? I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this later. Okay, Minotaur, are you still with us, or did I put you to sleep? Because now we're going to talk about Scrapbook 107. So now, Scrapbook 107 came out. Oh man, I got to pull this thing out. What year did that come out? Like 14 or something? Does anybody know off the top of their head? I got to pull this up now. I didn't have this one up here. I've got like 20 windows up here. If you guys saw my thing, you'd laugh. There's so much shit up on here. Okay, Forrest Scrapbooks. Let's pull this one up. Scrapbook 107. Got to go way down here. We're at 201 scrapbooks. Oh yeah, Scrapbook 201 came out. Just kidding, guys. That's Scrapbook 26. Where are we at? Gonna go up. Oh man, I was way down there. Hold on, let me find it. God, we're already an hour into this. I'm sorry, guys. I ramble on. I know. What? How did I get down there? Holy cow. Dow, fix your site. Dale, Dow, 11, there it is. Okay. 107. Okay, so it came out. This is one that's titled came out in November 2014. Okay. So Scrapbook 107, we all know, is the one that's got the picture of the phone cord, the utensil drawer, and then the envelope, right? Well, and the only reason why I'm talking about this is Cynthia recently came out with a video where she talks about Scrapbook 107, and then she really kind of goes into detail on the dog-eared $5 bill and how it covers up the word treasure and how it's got a C and how that it seems like it applies to her search area. Now, Cynthia, I'm not trying to beat you up. You know I love you. I'm only talking about this because we got into discussion over on Thor about this. So I'm not trying to beat up Cynthia. I love Cynthia. And that's not where this is going. I'm only talking about it because the whole video came up and then we were all talking about it. Well, about Scrapbook 107, when I read that scrapbook, the thing that really jumps out to me is the fact that he shows, the silverware drawer completely discombobulated. And then he shows it where he's gone in there and he's reorganized it, right? And then he shows, you know, that image of the envelope with the pin with the cap off. He shows the stamp askewed and a couple other things on there, right? Well, I look at this whole scrapbook as Forrest Fenn kind of hinting at kind of how he is. He's a very organized type of person, right? And I think that there was, I think it goes back to the Cody interview. And some of you guys are familiar with this, where Forrest Fenn talks about he was very irritated with some of his salespeople and people that worked in his office that would leave the caps off of the pens, right? And it just irritated him because we all know it, fountain pens back in the 70s or 80s, they would completely dry out, much like a Sharpie if you leave the cap off, right? They completely dry out. And that thing irritated him. Well, that re-tripped up in my mind in Scrapbook 107 because you see this image of things that a man who, like me, who somewhat grew up in the military for 20 years, would irritate him, you know, by somebody leaving a pin off a cap, by somebody having a stamp askewed, by having a $5 bill dog-eared. Those are things that a military person who's taught throughout their life to have things dress right dress, laid out in a specific way, very organized, almost OCD in a manner. You know, you got a pin with the cap off. You've got an address that is not left adjusted. You got the stamp that is not perfectly right where it should be. You've got again, a dog-eared $5 bill. To me, it's all these things that he's hinting at are things that annoy him, that he has structure to his life. He has order. Again, the spice drawer, right? What did you go through the spice drawer? And Peggy had spices everywhere and he reorganized it, right? Completely different SB, but you get what I'm saying. But what's funny about it is the very first thing we see in that scrapbook is, you know, the phone with the cord all twisted up. And what does he say? He says, oh my God, look at this phone with this cord twisted all up, and how many people have walked past this thing? You know, and all he's doing is talking about that. And then he's like, hey, I had to go to the DMV today and I ran out of gas. Well, look what's sitting right next to the phone, but a note from Peggy, we believe it's Peggy, saying, hey dear, you know, don't forget you got your driver's license today and get gas. Well, if Forrest Fenn wasn't so focused on the cord being twisted, maybe he would have seen the fact that Peggy told him to get gas and he never would have ran out of gas. So was Forrest Fenn himself, you know, stomping on the ants while the elephants marched by? He failed to notice the fact that he needed to get gas and thus ran out of it because he was focused on something that wasn't really that important. It was just a phone twisted. Everybody else was passing it up. Nobody else gives a crap about that except somebody who's so focused on it, right? And isn't that what we kind of do? We kind of get so focused on trying to figure out what these hints are that we go so far outside of this thing. And I'm not trying to beat anybody up on it. I love going down these rabbit holes with you guys just as much as anybody else. I just personally believe that it's completely subjective and will never potentially have any bearing on our ability to figure out this thing. I'm not saying those people are wrong. I'm just saying that we get so far outside what Forrest Fenn is trying to tell us is that box, whether it's the book or the poem, is completely debatable. Cheers, guys. So I know Minotaur and I were going back and forth on this, and he was trying to tell me, you know, can you tell me with a straight face that information that's written, you know, on the envelope isn't some kind of hint, or he's trying to hint at something. And I told Minotaur, I says, Minotaur, sure, you know, you could look at that, but you have to understand that if you really believe that any of that information that's written on the envelope is trying to hint at something, that is totally based on your subjective belief that it is. It's not based on any fact, especially beforehand. You can't go off of that stuff. Sure, it could be something that maybe gives you confidence, but it shouldn't be something that you should completely hinge your complete entire solve on. And I'm not saying that anyone is. I'm just saying that I look at that and I find it interesting, but I'm not going to hinge my whole complete solve on that or change my complete direction on what my warm water's hauled or my Homer Brown or my Blaze or anything else just based on that. I look at that, and my whole flip side of that is I see a man who's hinting at the fact that he likes structure and order, and these are things that annoy him. You know, the drawer, everything else. And again, it's kind of like him saying, you know, no one's given him the clues in the right order. There's order to the poem, you know, to save questions from being, or to answer some questions and save others from being asked. I did follow the clues in the poem when I hid the treasure, but I hid the treasure before the poem was complete. So he's saying that there were some parts of the poem that were already written before he hid the treasure and some parts that were hidden or written after he hid the treasure. There's order to the poem. Again, there's people that want to balk the whole 9 sentences, 9 clues theory based on the fact that he says, you know, begin at warm water's halt is the first clue. But those same people cannot wrap their mind around the fact that that first stanza could have been the last thing he wrote. Again, look at the tense nature of that stanza. As I have gone, it's like he is gone and already returned. Okay, so why is it I must go? He hasn't yet gone, right? I mean, there's different tense natures within that poem. So there's parts of it, as he even admits, that he potentially had written before he hit it, and then he wrote afterwards. I don't know how I went down that line, but anyway. Order. There's, again, no one's given him the clues in the right order, according to him in the Lure interview, right? There's order to the poem. There's structure. Minotaur, where are you at? Did I lose you? I'm just going to check the chat room here, see what you guys are talking about real quick. GCG, you're saying all Forrest had was imagination, guts, a logical mind, and the willingness to work hard. The poem is very structured. I believe so. Again, like he said, you know, he wasn't playing any games when he wrote that poem. The poem is straightforward. There's no, I mess up that word, there's no subterfuge in there. It's straightforward. It's just words. It's very structured. I mean, again, this is very subjective on my opinion. You guys know that. I'm trying to be honest with you guys. I'm not the authority on the chase. I'm just giving you the flip side of this whole thought process. Whether it's true or not, we don't know until this thing is found, right? Just going through your guys' stuff here. Try not to miss anything. Deep Thinker says, at flip side, this is the type of videos we need. Please don't apologize. Sorry, it's just my nature, guys. You guys are talking well amongst yourselves. That's perfectly fine. Jimmy Fast says, not abandoned. Fenn said if the value gets to 10 million, he would go retrieve it. Sure. He's still abandoned. Doesn't mean he can't go back, right? Like he said, he had a hole card. He could go back and get it if he felt it wasn't right, but he felt it was fine. I still think it's my personal opinion. I have no proof that it is abandoned property. I'm just reading what he says in here, my interpretation of the clues in the poem, that I see it as willfully abandoned property. You know, I think there's several, I think a lot of people agree that it is, and there are some people that think that it's, while he's still alive, it's not abandoned property. After he passes, it could be abandoned property. Sure, I mean, there's a good possibility that when he wrote this book, he did not believe that it would ever be found in his lifetime. You know, what did he say when Margie Goldsmith and a few other gave this thing life, that it really blew up? You know, he always thought that the treasure chest was a bomb, but he didn't know it had a fuse until a few people came along and gave it publicity, right? So he probably never believed those first 1,000 copies that it would even leave New Mexico, you know, and that's why a lot of people hinge their whole complete solve on is that idea that it has to be in New Mexico because of that. Okay, I go back to the poem and try and figure it out. Doesn't mean it's not in New Mexico. I'm just saying that you cannot hinge your solve on something that subjective. Anyway, it's just my thought, Jimmy. Doesn't mean it's right. Redneck says, did you notice that the drop cap in the middle of that chapter with bold print after it, and then I got cancer? What are we talking about? You're talking about in the Golden Moor chapter? The drop cap A in the middle. Let me go to Golden Moor and see what you're talking about here. I know there's a capital A in there, but it is not in the top of the, that is interesting. I'm just seeing that in my mind's eye right now, redneck. But you're right, it's not at the top like every other chapter, right? Is any other chapter like that? Well, I'm looking at Flywater. Flywater right here has a drop T in it. If that's what you're talking about, right? Yeah. So right here in Golden Moor, right there, A. And then I got cancer. Is he just trying to emphasize that? Sure. Yeah, I think so. Interesting. I never really gave that much thought. Again, I don't put a whole lot of emphasis on the book. I think I know the book as probably well as anybody else, but I don't. It's not the basis of my solve. Interesting though. Thanks. Yeah, Faith. I think it's abandoned again. Christian Turner, flip side, do you think you're close? As close as anybody else? I don't know. I have no confirmation. I have a lot of confidence. I have a lot of certainty, but I have no confirmation. Stored property, sure. You could call it that, a trove. When you look at the definition of trove, it says it's hidden or deliberately concealed property with potentially the intent of returning to collect it. Sure, he's always left him that hole card that he could go back and get it anytime he wanted. So I think Jimmy, you really got to go into the definition of a trove, and there's certain type of property that a trove only exists on, and I think that's very key too. In my opinion, I can't prove it. Deep Thinker says, your opinion on Fenn saying the clues will lead you to the treasure and whether it's buried or not, you can find it. If you can find the blaze, the result. Yeah, that's exactly what he said. Sure, absolutely. All right, I'm going back down to get live with you guys on the talking. Okay, what was that one? Still, we're running strong on numbers. I think we've been up above 70, but we're holding strong at mid 60s. So you guys are still interested. That's great. I'm going on an hour and 20 minutes here, quarter after 11 here. I'm not going to go past midnight. There's no way. GCD says the flip side, the word trove has both a literal and figurative meaning. Okay, I haven't really gone into that much, but okay. What do I think about that quote? Let's go back up to that quote again that you had said. Let me find it again. Sorry, Deep. I know the quote. I'm just trying to get it right so I don't mess it up. What do I think about that quote? I think it's a great quote. Where did it go? Dang it, I lost it. Sorry. Hold on. Deep. Okay, what is my opinion on Fenn saying the clues will lead you to treasure, and whether it's buried or not, you can find it if you can find the blaze as a result. Now, I think a lot of people would think that, the treasure might be resting right below the blaze, right? And if it's buried, it wouldn't matter. If that was in fact what you believe is in fact the blaze, a big FF carved on a tree or a rock or something else, and you look quickly down, you'd be looking down at your feet at the ground, and then you would know that it should be there, right? And if it's not there on top of the ground, either somebody else has taken it or it is in fact buried. I could go into a whole video on whether, why Forrest Fenn didn't want to give the clue whether it's buried or not. I think if he would have said, it's buried, it might have ruled out a whole bunch of different types of property. If he didn't say it was buried, it could do something completely different. Deep. It's definitely a great question. Something I could do a whole completely different video on my thoughts on that. But it's a great question. I think it ties. I think the opinion on that does tie directly into somebody asking him how far is the treasure from the blaze, and Forrest Fenn responded, I didn't take the measurement. But logic tells me if you don't know where the blaze is, it doesn't really matter. If you can find the blaze, the answer to your question will be obvious. So I think those two, what you're quoting here and that whole blaze question, do tie closely in together. That he says he didn't take the measurement. So is there in fact a measurement between where the treasure rests and the physical blaze? Now, our answer will be obvious. What makes that obvious? Is it obvious because it's at our feet, or is it obvious that the blaze is 10 miles away from where we're standing and where we believe the end of his rainbow is supposed to be, right? Again, why does he say the end of my rainbow and the treasure? Are these two separate things? And that leads me to question, again, this is outside of the poem, but it leads me to question why he says the end of his rainbow and the treasure. You know, the end is ever drawing nigh. Okay. The end of his rainbow, right? Okay, that's what I'm thinking. So we've got the end of his rainbow, which could be the position where we're supposed to be able to view the blaze. Again, what's the measurement? What's the distance? I don't know. I think those two quotes, the one that you're quoting and the one about the measurement, do tie closely in together. But it's a great thought process. I'd love to go into a whole different discussion in that. I don't think we have that time tonight, though. But great questions. You're welcome. Come over to Treasure Tracer and maybe we'll start a thread on it. Getting back down here to go live with you guys. Let's see. Deep Thinker. GCD says, Flip, what do you think about Sasha's comments regarding her hearing from a reporter that Forrest said the finder will get pretty dirty, muddy recovery? It's secondhand information. None of that crap helps us find this thing. Again, like Deep Thinker's thought, you know, his quote that he's saying, if you can find the blaze as a result of following the clues, you know, what does it matter, right? Whether it's buried or not. Again, and I guess it ties back into Forrest Fenn's unwillingness to answer my question about giving us an update on if anybody would get within 12 feet of it, that they would, you know, have a high chance of finding it, right? If you kind of flip that whole quote around, and he turns around and says, better not answer that question. Why is it best for him not to answer that question? Has somebody been that close and not find it? You know, he doesn't know. He hasn't been back to that spot. If some, you know, weeds blew in there, you know, is it sepultured? Is it entombed? Is it buried? You know, he doesn't know. He hasn't been back there. He doesn't know. So it's highly likely that time and Mother Nature potentially has covered that thing up even more than possibly Forrest did intentionally hide it or conceal it. Now it's even harder to find. You know, if somebody would got within 12 feet of it back in 2014 or 2013, 12, 11, or 10, they might have found it. 8, 9 years later, he doesn't know. He hasn't seen an actual picture of the physical resting spot of where it is, maybe. He can't tell. Just my opinion. Okay, I know we're getting... There's one last thing I wanted to talk about, and that was, I think Susie might still be in here tonight, but Susie did a video this last week, and it caught my attention because I'm a big Edgar Allan Poe guy, and the gold bug is one of my big outside the box kind of things. If you've ever watched my video called, you know, is Forrest Fenn's poem a map to the treasure, you'll understand where I'm going with this. But Susie had referenced the fact that on page 33, you know, which is, I think it's the, not Surviving Myself, but the Spanish Toy Factory. So you can go to page 33, that chapter, yeah, My Spanish Toy Factory. So you guys pretty much know this whole drawing here. But Susie did a great video on, you know, seeing what she saw as the 3 dots that are here, which represent the marbles, as being the representative, like the death's head, and then was kind of tying that into the whole gold bug story. And of course I chimed in there because I love the whole gold bug. I love Susie. I love watching her videos. But you know, that actually one of those marbles, of the 3 marbles, is actually a smiley face. And I know probably a lot of you have figured that out if you look really close. That marble that's on the top left-hand side is actually a smiley face. And I wanted to point that out to her. You know, and she was surprised. I guess she didn't know that, and maybe she did. I don't know. She never really confirmed that with me. But I remember noticing that, and then emailing Forrest Fenn back in oh geez, 2017 or 16 or something, asking if that was something that he had, he had written in there, or did the illustrator do that? He never responded to me on that, of course, but in August 21st of last year, 2018, when I did get to meet with Forrest Fenn at his home, and I did have the rare opportunity just before the September event to actually look at all the original drawings from the Thrill of the Chase. That drawing did actually have that smiley face on it. It wasn't something, I can't prove otherwise whether Forrest put that in there on the original drawing or Alan Polt did. I don't know. And I've never asked Alan Polt. Maybe one of you guys can email Alan Polt, but definitely Forrest Fenn didn't respond to me, and I didn't ask him about that. But I did notice, just to give you guys a little insider information, I guess we're going to call it, but this original person here was way over here inside this circle of the marble match in the original drawing. Alan Polt had put him way over here, but what Alan Polt didn't know, and this is what Forrest Fenn told me, is that Alan Polt didn't know that you can't be inside the circle as the shooter. You've got to be outside of it. So Alan Polt then had to, when they did the original or this drawing into the book, they physically moved him out of here. But the original drawing has this guy depicted actually well inside here and closer to these guys. Just interesting. I don't think it's not any kind of hint or anything like that. It's just a correction that I think that happened in there. But I think that the smiley face is definitely interesting in itself in there, whether Alan did that or Fenn did that. Fenn's never, Susie, tiny smiley face. It's interesting. Doesn't take away from your whole theory, and I'm not trying to beat you up, Susie. I don't think you think that, but I could do a whole video on the different correlations I see between the gold bug and Forrest Fenn's treasure hunt, and namely the poem. And what was I going to say? That was something I just had on the top of my mind that I wanted to quote. But I think it's interesting that if you've ever read the Gold Bug, you guys will understand that Legrand, when reading, the actual decrypted information, when it came out, it said, something, I have to go read it. I don't have it with me, but it was about Bishop's Castle. And Legrand had to figure out that Bishop's Castle actually came to a high rock that was called Bishop's Castle, or it was actually Bishop's Hostel. And then he figured out that it was actually a large rock face called Bishop's Castle. And it was kind of like the starting point. If you're trying to figure out the starting point, that was his starting point. And then when he got to Bishop's Castle, he had to find the Devil's Seat. But only after figuring out what Bishop's Castle actually was, or Bishop's Hostel was, then he could find, the Devil's Seat. And then from the Devil's Seat, he understood, he started really figuring out that, all these different, directions he was getting was using a good glass, a good glass in the Devil's Seat in Bishop's Castle. So many degrees at this, whatever, he figured out he had to be sitting in that position in order to look a certain direction. It's kind of like look quickly down, right? If you found the blaze, look quickly down. So he's looking in a specific direction. So I see a lot of similarities to what the directional clues in Forrest Fenn's poem and the directional or the information that Legrand had to figure out to find Captain Kidd's treasure. It's like we have these steps of telling us to get from point A to point B. And then when we're at point B, look quickly down, right? I see a lot of ties and connections there, just me. All right, guys, that kind of wraps up a lot of stuff I wanted to talk about. I'm going to take 1 second for a break. I'll be right back. You guys talk amongst yourselves. I'll check the chat room for some last stuff, and we'll wrap this thing up for tonight. Be right back. All right, guys, I'm back. Hope you didn't miss me. Cheers. I got a little beer left, so what do you guys want to talk about? Go back up here, check the chat room. GCG, what do you think of Forrest's comments during the Playboy interview? I'm surprised it hasn't been found yet. I think it's possible that some people have been close. I mean, there's all this talk about a lead search or all this other crap. I think there's quite a bit of evidence that may point to the fact that, I mean, there's got to be a lead searcher, right? I mean, there's got to be, and it could be a group of people, it could be multiple people. There's got to be people that are focused in on the correct area, but just not figuring out all the clues, right? I mean, they're looking so far down the road that they don't notice what's right beside them. They're stomping on the ants while the elephants march by. It takes time, I mean, I've been focused on what I believe is the correct area for going on, 2.5, 3 years now. And I haven't found it. And some people will say, well, then you're completely wrong. You've gone out there 20, 30, 10, 15, 20 times or whatever, you must be completely wrong. Well, okay. Forrest Fenn says this is not going to happen on a spring break. It's not going to be that easy. You just can't get out of your car and walk out in the woods and find it. It's just not that easy. So I think I'm a trial and error type of person. I'm the Edison. Some people are the Teslas. Again, it's all about geography. I happen to live within the southern part of the Rocky Mountains. I'm, 800 miles away from the very northern portion of this search area, in Montana. So I have the luxury of being close. I have the luxury of having a very supportive family. I have the luxury of those types of things. Some people don't have those. Some of us searchers live in England. Some live in Australia. Some live in California on the East Coast. They may not have the time. I mean, there's plenty of people that have a lot of time to search, but they don't have the money to search. There's plenty of people that have the money to search, but don't have the time to search. It's a balance, right? I mean, we do that same thing with our family and things that we want in our lives. We may have plenty of money, but we don't have the time to enjoy those things. We have plenty of time, but we don't have the money to get those things that we want to enjoy. It's a balance. I just happen to be fortunate geographically to be, located somewhat close to the search zone, the 4 states. I live in one of them. I'm unfortunate in that sense. So I have the opportunity to go out and test theories, just like Edison would test out different filaments for the incandescent light bulb. He kept trying, he kept doing it. So I have to go out there and I get an idea in my mind. I go out there and test it and I look at a new area or try a different thing. Doesn't work. Doesn't mean I wasn't within 12 feet of it. I don't know. I have no confirmation. There's no sign right there saying, yay, Sean, welcome to the Homer Brown, right? I don't have none of that shit. I just have my own subjective interpretation of the clues in the poem, just like everybody else, right? Homer Brown, right? Flip side, Fenn said over and over, I'm a night person. Don't you think he hit it at night? And I don't know if he hit it at night. He said it was done in one afternoon, right? An afternoon seems to me when the sun is out. He said he hit it in summertime and he did it in one afternoon. Unless it was a solar eclipse, I think he did it at daytime. I mean, why is an 80-year-old guy going to go out there in the middle of the night and try and hide this thing and trip over a rock and bust his head? Don't go where an 80-year-old man couldn't go, right? It's not in a dangerous place, in the sense of whatever you consider danger, right? Cheers. I think the illustrations in the book about darkness, I think, are very interesting. So let's just look at, we'll talk about that since you brought it up. Homer Brown. Let's go to the chapter Surviving Myself, which is the first one. Where did it go? Did I go back? Oh, I went too far. Long ride home. I'm too far. Where did it go? Come on back here. Got gypsy magic at night. Okay. Surviving Myself, right? This is when he's in the graveyard and he's looking up. And he said, you know, it took guts to go in there when it was dark with no moon. Okay. When it's no moon, it's called the new moon, right? It's called a new moon. So he's here, you know, he's young, he's new, he's fresh, he's a young man. It's a new moon. Now, when you go to the epilogue, and there's obviously other ones, there's stout-hearted men, there's gypsy magic when it's all dark, I get it. And it could just be adding ambience into the illustrations. We did a whole video on the illustrations. And one of the biggest illustrations that really stood out to us in that whole video was the epilogue, right? And here it is. This is what is called a waning moon. And a waning moon is when it's in its period of decline. That means it's focusing not from a waxing moon, is when it's growing from a crescent moon to a half moon and then into a waning moon. A waning moon is like in it's passing time. It's waning. It's oh, that's the word I'm looking for. But it's him older in life. The epilogue, you know, he's talking about, you know, as you know, I'm reflecting on the 80 years of my life. You know, what have I learned? It's him and the older, and they're both looking up, right? He's young, his new moon, he's young. It's a new moon and a waning moon in his elder years. I kind of look at that, but I think in our whole illustrations talk, Homer Brown, we really talked about that is the one illustration without in that entirety of the book that does not match the story. There's nothing in that story, the epilogue, that talks about a lumberjack sitting in a field of trees that have been cut down and looking at a bird in the moon. Like, so, I mean, that's the one illustration. If I had to say anything, if there was some kind of oddity about it, would be that one illustration. And Jeremy Parnell has done a great job of dissecting that illustration and talking about it. I can't remember where his thread is. I think he actually has one on Dal Neitzel's site. I can't remember the name of it. Jeremy, I'm sorry if you're watching this. I cannot remember the name. If you're in the chat room, please point it out. But he did do a breakdown on the illustration, and he was absolutely right. If you go look at that and how he broke down how that illustration probably originally looked like, I can tell you, guaranteed 100%, he's absolutely right, because I have seen that original image. It is not, the original image is not exactly how it is in this book. It's much narrower in the sense, and go look at Jeremy's, you know, write-up on that on Dal Neitzel's site. It is definitely, it's a lot narrower than what you see here. It's actually shorter on both ends. And you can see there's duplicate copies of it. And Jeremy, I don't want to take away from him. He does a good job of talking about that. So hope I answer your question there, Homer Brown, in 10,000 words or less, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm starting to lose some of you guys. You're waning out. Hey, Mike Nodine, Mr. Lurker Mike, good to see you in here. Talking about the Once Upon a While with the added Omega. All right, guys. So tonight we kind of talked in what I call the evolution of Forrest Fenn's advice to searchers, where it really talked about the book and the poem being, you know, kind of a symbiotic relationship that you need both of them, to where I think he's really focused us more on the poem itself. Again, based on my subjective opinion, but you guys can go back and watch this and you know, research this stuff for yourself. I'm just putting this out there as an opinion, and I want you to, you know, you're obviously all smart people. You can figure this out on your own. We talked about abandoned property. We talked a little bit about the Playboy interview, you know, the ants and the elephants, my whole message in the bottle thing. And just kind of noticing one thing, you know, I watched, you know, Toby's whole ants and the elephants video that he did a couple weeks ago. It really seems like, you know, even Toby now is kind of picking up on this whole idea that poem purity and focusing just on the poem is important. You know, so I'm seeing a lot of these ideas starting to filter out into some of the YouTube channels, and that's perfectly fine. I have no, you know, there's no intellectual property in this. Once you put something out there, it's open to everybody, and I'm okay with that. You know, a hat tip would be nice once in a while, but it's not required. You know, it's no different than, you know, Dale Neitzel M. Davis and DeCall and I did the whole video on why is Forrest Fenn's poem so difficult to solve, and we came to the consensus, at least among the panel, that there's absolutely no confirmation, that we have any of these clues correct until we recover the treasure. Now it seems like that is proliferating out on the other FenTube channels, and that's perfectly fine. We like to be the flip side of the argument, the alternate talk on everything Fenn related. Doesn't make any of it right. We're not authorities on the chase. We just like to bring up different things. So I think really, again, like I said, we've talked about the evolution of Forrest Fenn's advice, that it really initially kind of sent us all on these rabbit holes, that the hints were important. We needed the book. And now it's like, oh shit, what have I done? It appears to me, he's like, oh shit, what have I done to all these poor people? Get back in the box, focus on the poem, guys. So poem purity, gaining traction. SB 107, we talked about that and my belief in that. Cynthia had her whole video on that. I'm not trying to knock hers. Go watch her. She's definitely always interesting and entertaining and fun to watch. Susie Finhaven, the same thing. She has a good video out there on the gold bug connections. And I love that. I'm all into that. I'd love to have a conversation with Susie on the gold bug. I'm big on that. Minotaur Marino, I didn't go much into your whole $25 essay deal, but hey, there's interesting information in that, I'm sure. I'm not a big proponent or a believer that what warm water halt is, or the actual specific point of where that happens will ever be found on a GNIS database. I just don't believe that. I could be wrong. He could be right. Who knows? So 50-50, I guess. maybe more, maybe less, either way. I don't know. I'll let you guys think about that. We talked a little bit about Pandora's box, abandoned property, and I see a couple more things here. Gregory, you said thanks for the venue to chat tonight. Sure, absolutely, guys. Bill, hey Bill. Flip side, the word there'll tell me it isn't covering his will. His will is hidden in there. Sure, yeah, it's hidden. His will could be inside that olive jar. Who knows? Possibly, like I said, he's taken such great care in protecting that olive jar. What has he told us? He knows the treasure chest is wet at some point in time. He's told us that the treasure chest is not underwater. He's also told us that you will find no mildew in the treasure chest. So why did he take such great care in protecting whatever information is inside that olive jar? If it is just the unauthorized biography of the man, which should be, like he's admitting, is the same information in here, why does it need to be back in there? Okay? We could just $35 and you can get this plus $9.95 shipping, so why put it all back in there if there's not something more important in that information inside that olive jar? Again, unless somebody is going to stumble upon that thing and wants to know a little bit about the foolish person who abandoned such an opulent cache. But hasn't Forrest Fenn assured us that no one's going to stumble upon this thing? So why put the autobiography in there? The only person that's going to find it is the person who purposely walked right straight to it. So why would you need to put that in there? What's in there? That's my question. What is in there? Is that the mechanism of him knowing, why he is still alive? That's my thoughts. I just think. Bill, good to see you in here, Bill, brother. I haven't seen you put anything out. I hope you're doing all right, buddy. Let me catch a couple more things. T Brown, we should call all bio breaks. I got to go halt some water, right? Got to drop some water. GCG, you will find no mildew or mold in the treasure chest is both true and a serious hint. Possibly, yeah. Maybe I haven't extrapolated more out of it or as much as you have. It could have something to do with, the geographical location. He knows the treasure chest is wet. I've talked about relative humidity. Relative humidity in specific areas could cause any metal that is out in the open or buried or whatever, or lightly covered, to have condensation on it. That could have something to do with no mildew or mold in the treasure, sure. I'm not an expert in that area. I will not claim to be. But I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express. Jimmy Fast, the autobiography is not the same as Fenn's memoir. Yeah, sure. He calls it an unauthorized autobiography. And I think he even responded to Bill Gorman one time and said that he's not given anybody permission to print whatever is in those 20,000 words. Why would he not give anybody permission? If it's already written and he's not giving anybody else permission, is there something juicy in there that he doesn't want to give anybody permission? I don't know. I don't know. I don't have the treasure. You know, if I had it, I probably still wouldn't tell you guys. All right, GCG. Find is a form of the word found. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Again, I think so many people ignore the words in that poem. We get so wrapped around our naive assumptions about keywords and phrases in that poem, and we go running out thinking we know exactly where the treasure chest is. There's people driving down the road looking for a blaze because that's a word in the poem. T Brownie Club with Jackie. What are you guys talking about? Anyway, okay, we're at an hour and 45 minutes in here, guys. You guys are still 50 strong. I'm actually amazed at that. I didn't think I'd get like 20 people in here tonight hanging out, and I would have been completely happy with that. So fun times. Anyway, guys, you guys got anything else before I head out of here? Again, you guys never know when I'm going to go live. So you could hit that little thing over here if you want. I really don't care. Numbers don't matter to me. I won't monetize this channel. That's not what I'm about. I'm just about having fun with you guys. This is my thrill of the chase. Just having a good time. Drinking beer. You guys can all see my family back here. My wife, we had these pictures done about a year or so ago, and my wife, when we got the new house, she wanted to build this big wall. So that's my new backdrop, I guess. It's what's important to me. Been a fun night. It's a Monday night. I got to be up in 6 hours, so I should probably get to bed. Anyway, guys, hope you had a good time. I'm going to put this video to not private, but it's like unlisted or whatever. And I'm going to post it over on Treasure Chaser. So if you want to watch it, back or whatever, again, you can catch it over there for a little while, but probably after a few days or so, I'm going to send it to private. So just give you guys a heads up on that. And I have nothing else. Thank you guys for coming out and hanging out for a little bit. I hope you guys had a good time. Hope you got something out of it. It's fun hanging out with you guys and chatting about Forrest Fenn. Again, all these are my subjective beliefs. I'm not an authorized authority on the chase. So just having fun with you guys. Good to see you guys. Hope you had a good night, and we will catch you all on the flip side. Bye, guys.